Hey, what's up? Rob Colbert, CTO, Gab.com, and I wanted to go ahead and actually translate this for you because it is something that I would like for folks to understand. I would like for folks to understand why we got rid of this flavor of federation and what we're going to do about it. So when you look at how Gab was operating as a federated service on a fork of Mastodon, you discover that 99% of Gab was insular, which just means that Gabbers were only talking with Gabbers. They were not necessarily following people from outside the instance. They're not that interested in what's going on outside the instance. There wasn't a lot of that going on. So relative to Gab, Federation was a non-event, a feature of little value to many people. Now, it can be argued that the implementation was the problem. It can be argued that Gab's bugs in Federation were part of the problem. There are a lot of arguments that can be made, but the one that matters the most is the fact, and the reason that ActivityPub never really got any real resources here, is ActivityPub as a protocol is old, it's crusty, it's kind of screwed up, and it is heinously inefficient, and its security is, in a word, bad. So when you add all that up, what it means is that it's very expensive to operate an instance that is using ActivityPub to federate and communicate, interoperate with other entities on the internet, right? Regardless of what they are. It doesn't matter what they are. Let me just spell it out a little bit. Let's say someone on Gab has 3,000 people following them from server B. Okay, so over here, server A, you have Gab, and over there you have server B. 3,000 people from server B, let's say, follow me. Okay, just to keep the discussion simple. No one ever did that. I don't have 3,000 followers, nor do I care. But let's say that that's what happened. Now, I go on Gab and I write, Hillary Clinton sucks. Publish. What happens? Well, under the hood, Mastodon is going to deliver that to everybody on this server, gab.com. It's also going to have to deliver that Hillary Clinton sucks to 3,000 people on server B. There are a couple good ways to do that, and there's a really bad way to do that. And the ActivityPub protocol chooses the absolute worst possible way to do that. There is no aggregation in this form of communication, where server A is now going to tell 3,000 people on server B the same thing. In ActivityPub, you do that over and over and over and over and all 3,000 times. My server, gab.com server A, has to tell server B, okay, on server B for user number 1, Hillary Clinton sucks. Congratulations. On server B for user 2, Hillary Clinton sucks. And this is a whole separate request with its own encryption, encrypted to deliver that message to just that one person. And then it does it again. For 3, for 4, for 5, all the way through user number 3000. And people wonder why a post edit takes a little while to complete. It's because Mastodon was going off using ActivityPub, notifying 3,000 separate people on the same server that your shit changed. That takes a lot of time. I mean, it doesn't matter how fast the link is. You have setup and teardown on 3,000 connections, plus a request and a response, all the ACKs and the rest. I mean, packets are flying like you have no idea. It's insanity. It costs a lot to do that because now our processors, like the CPUs, the actual thinky things inside our servers, have to encrypt that shit, the same message, 3,000 separate times and deliver it 3,000 separate times over our network connection, which again, we do pay to maintain, which means now we're running out of capacity on that network connection. We're running out of capacity on the processors. We're running out of capacity on the memory because of course it wants to do this lots of times in parallel. So you have all these things doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over. It all adds up. It does. And that is one of ActivityPub's attack vectors. And Gab was constantly under attack. We would always have to be checking, okay, which leech out there is, we would call it activity draining. I have no idea what the, popular or, what the federated kids call this shit. But we would constantly be under activity drain, right? Where what was happening is people would register throwaway VPSs on cloud services in fucking Russia And all they would do is attach and leech, attach and leech, attach and leech, have those, instances. They're just a script pretending to be an instance, follow a bunch of users on Gab. And then that would mean as those users are posting, as activity is being generated on our system, that system is generating an extreme level of load, because like ActivityPub literally does nothing to validate that the user on the far system is a real user. It just does the most basic of exchange, trusts you, says, okay, cool, I'll send you the updates, yay! And it goes and does that, which is broken. Because server A, gab.com, should be able to send one message to server B that includes maybe a prepackaged, parcel for delivery. And then let that system do what it does really well as a local problem and deliver Hillary Clinton sucks to the 3,000 people there that gave a shit about it. That's just not how it runs. So instead, what Gab's going to be doing is building what's called Exodus/Kaleidoscope. Exodus is the protocol, all right? It will be the on-wire way that machines are going to exchange information in the future. It will have aggregation and other interesting solutions in it that help things cost less and run faster overall, everywhere, for everyone, no matter what the scale is, right? You could be a small instance with a small community interacting with a big one, vice versa, whatever. You'll all just have your, interesting amount of single request traffic bouncing around a new mesh of sorts. But that's going to be a little bit down the road, because I look at 99.3% insular and I say to myself, yeah, that's not allowed to be our top priority right now. We have other top priorities. Like, for example, on the left-hand side here, you see that we just launched the new shortcuts feature where I can go to any profile or group and add a shortcut to that. And now I've got a one-click right there in the sidebar that lets me go and pay attention to people who matter. I have Millwood16. She matters. I definitely would recommend people to follow her, but I've only just recently tested the feature. That list is going to grow for sure. That right there is more useful and more valuable at Gab than decentralization and federation ever were. Ever. I can point on the doll and show that usage of this since its launch is greater than the usage of federation ever was, any of its given days. And this feature is Gab spending money on a thing that adds value, real value, to an enormous number of people in our community. Not the 3 people sitting over there with Federation turned on. The 99.7% of the community the 99.3% of the community that would rather have that gets it sooner because it's a higher priority. See, we turn ActivityPub off, and then the moment we do that, you start noticing a bunch of progress all around the whole platform. First and foremost, the server starts acting right? We were able to pull the performance back into something that matters again. Instead of waiting, 10 years for a home timeline to load, it just loads, right? Instead of waiting, generally speaking, the site loads. That's a goal, right? That's a high priority. And we have that now too. These are all things that have been able to be accomplished once we get rid of the irritating distraction of ActivityPub and its busted-ass aggregation costing the company literally everything. A solid black hole of resource drain was in these servers. And it's gone now, and that's a good thing. Because it means we get this other stuff now, like stuff that people actually use here, which is all that matters to Gab. Right? It's all that matters to Gab. It's wonderful that Federation exists, and it's wonderful that there's instances out there that have 20 people on them doing the federated thing. That's great. That's phenomenally cool. It's not worth paying attention to, though. I mean, it is seriously not worth paying attention to yet. It isn't like there is some, massive amount of brain trust in that community that by the Gab community not having access to that right now is costing Gab more than... No, it's quite the inverse. The brain trust exists at Gab. Why do you think that we had such an activity drain problem in the first place? Everybody was trying to get at what Gab is saying. For good and bad reasons. Not that that matters, but for good and bad reasons. So, the translation on this is just that it was untenable. It was not worth it to continue putting resources into the problem of ActivityPub given that ActivityPub itself is the problem, and given that 0.7% of gabbers cared. So I think we could do better. I do. I think there are lots of reasons why Federation didn't do so good. One of which is the fact that Gab itself had plenty of bugs with it as a, bastardized fork of Mastodon. That's just a fact. But beyond that, it was shit. Like when you would finally arrive at another server, it tended to be shit. Like it wasn't that you were there to discover new things. What Federation was doing was enabling those people to discover new things by attaching and leeching into Gab. I want to clarify a little bit. The human beings that were doing that were attaching to Gab, I find value in that. I do. The problem was all the bots and the shitheads, the poorly raised children of the internet. Those people are too able to drain massive amounts of resources out of Gab, make the site perform poorly, etc., just as a function of us having ActivityPub. Now that we don't have those problems anymore. Now that we don't, Gab is usable again. Now that we don't, you're seeing other features arrive because we're not constantly, as an entire team, having to put out a bunch of fires. That shit was fucking stupid, so I shot it in the face. And then I threw it out of a window, and now here we are. So where we will be, though, by the end of the year is on what will be known, you'll learn more about this as we go, Exodus/Kaleidoscope. Exodus is the protocol. Kaleidoscope is our reference technology that we're going to publish that others can pattern their own developments after. But the end result is Federation that works, Federation that scales, Federation that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, Federation that does not fuck the privacy of every user on your server, right? Federation that actually can be appreciated. Federation that people who use Gab will likely actually use. Because let me tell you what will happen. We're going to publish our result. And then there will be people who look at that result, review that result for flaws on our part that might violate their privacy or trust. And then they're going to switch to ours because it will be painfully obvious how ours is the better solution, how ours is the more tenable, the more feasible solution, how ours is actually going to be the long-term solution, right? Like this is all short-term hobby fuckery, right? You're looking at poorly raised children fucking around, dicking around on the internet with computers. Like that's what you're looking at. Honestly, in the ActivityPub federated world, that's what you're looking at. Fucking cartoon unicorns fucking around and dicking around on a computer because they're bored and their parents didn't put them in good programs or something. I don't fucking know. I don't know. I don't care. It's not like I really participated in that whole shit. Because I don't give a fuck. I mean, I'm letting you know. I don't give a goddamn about what's going on outside of Gab. Because no matter what, it's going to be colored in some way, and I don't fucking care about it. The only thing I pay attention to personally is what's going on Gab. So, relative to me, I in the biggest of ways, do not give a fuck about what's going on other people's servers, right? I care about what the people that log into my servers do, because that's what I'm paid to be here to do. And I do still think that there is an extreme underlying interest in Federation that people maybe don't even know that they have. But once we get it right, and once you start seeing the right kinds of other communities popping up where we don't have the retardedness of instances blocking Gab and whatever because they're opting into a Gab system now, I think that what will grow out of that is going to be a better end result. And I know that it's going to be a safer and cheaper to operate end result. And that is my goal. Okay, that is my goal. Federation itself is not the goal. Federation and all these other constraints is the goal, right? Because Gab operates a business. And we like to earn a profit if possible. And we're getting a lot better at that too. Because we make decisions like this, right? Because if we don't, then we fail as a business, and that would be dumb. So we can't be dumb, and that means we can't have ActivityPub right now. Well, it actually means we can't have ActivityPub ever. It means you can't have Federation right now. But it doesn't mean you can't have Federation ever. What it means is that, again, as a small team with the resources we have, we'll get there when we can. And that's really the full translation of this. If you have any other questions at all, don't hesitate. I'm really happy to elaborate on this stuff because I want people to understand. We're not like just doing this stuff. It's like there is data that is we measure and then we improve. Right? This is a common pattern to follow in any kind of leadership. But generally speaking, We measure things and then we make decisions, and we do that toward improvement, not just experimentation for the sake of, not just, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, that's not what we're doing. We try things to see what the community thinks, to see if it adds value, to see if people appreciate it, to see if it's, expanding their ability and capability to communicate with others elsewhere. And it didn't work. I mean, it just didn't work in this case. So Gab's going to be honest about that, and we're going to say it didn't work. We think we understand why. We know why on a business level that this did not work, but we also think we know why, just on a general level, why, what ActivityPub's been around for a really long time. I mean, it has. So why are other sites bigger than it? Like, why, when Gab showed up on the Fediverse, right, why was it the biggest instance to have arrived when doing that? Why? It's because we weren't trying to take their retarded ass approach from day one. So we were just bigger. And then when we arrived, what happened? Like, did you see Gab in some way miraculously change, and we made this big discovery that, oh my God, this is everything better than we even thought it could ever be? No, that's not what happened at all. 99.3% of you said, yeah, that's neat, and then went back to what you were doing. So no, Gab does not spend a significant amount of the company's resources maintaining and operating something 0.7% of the community uses. No, that's not what we do. All right, cool. So I'm out. Thanks for watching. I hope that cleared things up. If it didn't clear it up to your liking, by all means, let's keep the conversation going, because that's what's happening now, right? Like, ActivityPub turned into a conversation that's going to turn into a list of features you get to use to enjoy the internet more. So the conversation is the phase we're in now. That's the important phase. That's where I would like to see more people join this discussion and say, hey, what if it did this? What if it did this? What if I had the ability to do this? What if? This is the time for what if. So let's get some what if happening, and let's try to figure out what decentralization should mean instead of what it does mean. Let's not look at what that thing is currently doing. I don't do that. Let's not look at what they're currently doing and say, we should build one just like it. No, we should not build one just like it. It's all fucked up and shit. So if I need to elaborate more on the fucked upness of ActivityPub or Mastodon and all the rest of that, by all means, come at me. I'll more than happily answer the questions. First and foremost, the biggest problem with Mastodon is its design, not the programming language. So we can elaborate on that. We can totally elaborate on it. We can talk about why their various choices for various pieces of technology are poor, and how we can do better. And then let's do better and actually deliver that, instead of just sitting around talking about it, drinking coffee all day at Starbucks, because that's fucking boring. I did a lot of that too. Take care. Bye.